Greetings and salutations, loyal viewers of this channel. My name is Sean, and today we got to talk about an absolutely devastating blow to the super mayor that was delivered by a court who sided with the board of trustees to say, hey, look, you cannot appoint your puppets anymore without the consent of the board of trustees to all these different various positions, effectively destroying her power because the super mayor has to replace all these different various indicted members of her administration due to the fact that many of them have turned on her, and of course you need people to run the actual government in the village of Dolton. Now we're going to get into this, but before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay?
A dramatic meeting in Dolton leads to even more controversy, this time over a new hire.
Not only did Mayor Tiffany Henyard make the hire without consent from the board, we're learning tonight the newest employee has a storied past.
So look, I've covered the super mayor for a long time on this channel. I have an entire playlist for you guys if you want to recap in greater detail all of the different various things that I'm going to sum up for you in about 60 seconds, because if I were to break this down with all the depth that it requires, this video would be 3 hours long. But from the top, here's what you guys need to know about the recent updates. Keith Freeman, who is the village of Dolton's administrator, Tiffany Henyard's right-hand man, not only in the village of Dolton, but in the Thornton Township, ended up getting indicted for bankruptcy. It appears as of right now that he has flipped on the super mayor. He's churning over where all the bodies are buried. So that position in her mind is completely vacant. And this is in addition to the police chief of the village of Dolton, another puppet of Henyard, who also was indicted, if you can believe it, for bankruptcy fraud, who may or may not be trying to turn on the super mayor as well, although what you need to know about him is that he effectively can't be the police chief anymore because it has been ruled that he can't carry a gun and basically has to turn in his badge, thus making him unqualified to be the lowest level officer, let alone the police chief. Now, in response to this, the super mayor is trying to make all these different various appointments in order to replace these figures with more loyal puppets in order to keep her administration going, and Keith Freeman's slot is the first one that we're going to talk about today, because you will not believe who she decided to replace him with.
My next appointment will be for village administrator.
Last night, Dolton Mayor Tiffany Henyard appointed a new top aide to a $100,000 a year job without board consent. 34-year-old Michael A. Smith, who's been active in South suburban politics for years.
The reason for Mike is he have a wealth of great information. He's a young person and ex-politician. He knows the laws like the back of his hand.
So this character, Michael A. Smith, that the super mayor decided to go with in order to replace Freeman, he's a guy with a checkered past, if you could say the least. And it's actually kind of hilarious that the super mayor described him as somebody who knows the law like the back of his hand, because unsurprisingly to everybody out there in my audience, but maybe surprisingly to people who think that there has to be some bottom to the depths of corruption and insanity of the super mayor, this guy has a lengthy criminal past. Just like the super mayor who was arrested for breaking into cars, this guy's also got a record, and of course she tried to appoint this guy to be her right-hand man.
Perhaps that's because Smith has been in and out of trouble with the law for years. Public reporting shows Smith has been charged at least 8 times with crimes ranging from domestic battery to official misconduct. In 2012, Smith, then a young trustee in Dixmoor, resigned after pleading guilty to theft when he allegedly stole gasoline by posing as a police officer.
So just think about the madness of that particular case to which this guy pled guilty to. While he was a member of the board of trustees in another area in the state of Illinois, this guy allegedly posed, I don't know why I'm saying allegedly, he technically pled guilty. This guy posed as a police officer and used his made-up status as a cop to steal gasoline from somebody, which honestly sounds like probably one of the most ghetto things I've ever heard of in my entire life. That being said, gas prices may have been way up back then, so he had to do that in order to pay for it. So this guy is just crazy in every possible way. He has the domestic violence charges and all of that, but we haven't even gotten into the juicy stuff, because if you guys will remember way back when on this channel, one of the first scandals related to the super mayor was that she hired a predator, somebody who participated in a gang rape, no, I'm not kidding about this, to be somebody to inspect inside people's homes in the village of Dolton, and that was one of the first scandals that she ended up getting herself involved in.
Curious after a Fox 32 investigation found this registered child sex offender on the public payroll.
A sex offender, you don't give them carte blanche to go into different people's homes.
46-year-old Lavelle Redmond is close friends with Dolton Mayor Tiffany Henyard, who in September hired Redmond as a code enforcement officer without the village board's approval. Redmond served 25 years in prison for the brutal gang rape and beating of 2 young teenage girls in the 1990s and was...
Well, guess what? This guy may be significantly worse than that previous criminal, but are we surprised that the super mayor, who says she's a black woman in power...
Because y'all got false narratives out there, and y'all should be ashamed of y'allself. Y'all black. Y'all are black. And y'all sitting up here beating and attacking on a black woman that's in power. Y'all should be ashamed of yourselves. All the stuff that y'all did to get people to come to our community, to just diss and down our community. Shame on y'all.
Associates with all these different various criminals that have on their record sex crimes with minors and, of course, violence against women.
Then in 2018, Smith was working as an assistant dean at Thornton Fractional High School when he was fired for sexual harassment of a female student, grooming a student with lascivious intent, and inappropriate aggressive behavior towards a male student. According to his termination letter, Smith was accused of contacting a 15-year-old female student on Snapchat with inappropriate comments and making her his girlfriend.
So I just want to point a couple of things out for everybody out there in the audience. We're talking about the state of Illinois, and we're talking about somebody abusing their position of power in the public schools against the students and actually getting fired for it. This is a damn near impossibility. Do you know how guilty you have to be for the teachers union to not get you a cash settlement when you're accused of a crime in the public school system? Obviously, you gotta have some major big problems. And I know, again, technically, allegedly, except for the stuff that he was convicted for, but the facts are what they are. And this is the person that the super mayor has decided to roll with. Somebody who, as a member of the board of trustees, stole gasoline and pled guilty to that while impersonating a police officer with domestic violence charges on his record, and then with multiple inappropriate contacts with female and male students while he was in a position of power in the public school system. This is the guy that she wants to be her new right-hand man, this criminal scumbag, and nobody should be surprised other than the fact that it takes a level of audacity that should be shocking to the conscience of the American people that the super mayor is going in this direction.
We have a constant pattern of her hiring people without doing a proper background check and presenting it to the board. And that's our issue. That could pose a great danger to our community.
While I do appreciate the Dolton Board of Trustees, because credit where credit is due, they've been on this story since before any YouTubers were covering it, let alone the national media. But the fact of the matter is, I don't think we can lock this down as another mistake by the super mayor when this is a pattern of behavior. Like, she didn't look into this guy's past or anything like that. The fact of the matter is, she associates with corrupt criminal types, and that has been proven out time and time again by her hires, by the people working in her administration, and we should not be shocked at this moment in time that this guy with this history was hired because her original first controversial hire had a very similar criminal history. In fact, arguably a more brutal criminal history under his belt.
Dolton trustees Brittany Norwood and Tammy Brown
is alarming.
Were not at last night's meeting when Smith was appointed. The 4 Dolton trustees opposed to Henyard postponed the meeting and say none of the action taken was legal.
It's very interesting, considering the fact that she didn't have a quorum. So I don't understand how someone could be appointed.
So yeah, in this particular meeting, the super mayor decided that she was not going to let the board of trustees postpone it because she says she is the queen. She is the one who rules all of the village of Dolton with an iron fist, and she don't got to take nothing from no one, especially when people are delivering all these false allegations, as she would say.
False allegations and not facts.
When she is completely innocent and just fighting for the people. So obviously, these are all illegal appointments, but this is what led up to them actually filing suit against the super mayor, which we will get into the results a little bit later, even though, spoiler alert, the super mayor lost that lawsuit.
Smith is replacing Henyard's previous hand-picked village administrator, Keith Freeman, who fell out of favor after he was charged with bankruptcy fraud and is now believed to be cooperating with an FBI investigation into Henyard. But Freeman is apparently still on the village payroll and filling the job. So can you have a second village administrator?
No. We don't have the finances for that. As you all know, we are definitely in a financial bind. and we cannot afford 2 village administrators.
So yeah, for those of you guys who are confused about this whole situation, in the village of Dolton, you cannot appoint a second village administrator, just like they laid out right there. The position has already been filled, but where the dispute actually comes in is the super mayor, when she found out that Keith Freeman might have turned state's evidence against her, has decided that Keith Freeman is fired, even though the village board has said no, he's not fired. This would be a violation of a whistleblower statute, and they outvoted her in order to keep him in office in that position. But the super mayor doesn't care about rules, she doesn't care about regulations or anything like that. She has decided that she is going to install her puppets, even though Keith Freeman, while currently being under indictment for bankruptcy fraud, is still filling this position. And by the way, the super mayor actually successfully fired him from the Thornton Township position. So if not for the intervention of the Board of Trustees, he would definitely be out of a job as soon as he flipped on her.
Starters, we paid a visit to Village Hall around 3 this afternoon, and I'm told Mayor Tiffany Henyard was not at work today. As for that court order, this is a major win for those trustees who have been up against Henyard for some time.
So yeah, now we're in a situation where a judge has sided with the Board of Trustees, saying that the super mayor did not have this authority to appoint these 3 positions. Again, we talked about the criminal replacing the village administrator. We talked about what happened with the previous police chief. But in addition to that, she's also trying to replace the attorney, because the attorney is also examining all the different various issues that the super mayor has, and she doesn't like the fact that the village is essentially paying somebody to keep her in check. So these appointments were shot down. There was a restraining order issued against the super mayor, and she decided to do the honorable thing, which is not show up to work as soon as this ruling came down.
A judge yesterday siding with 4 trustees by ruling that Henyard did not have the legal authority to make 3 recent appointments: a new police chief, village attorney, and village administrator, all of them given jobs by Henyard earlier this month. Trustees argue that she did so without their consent or approval, and that she did not have a quorum to start the meeting in the first place. The trustees' motion for a temporary restraining order also alleges bullying, retaliation, and violating the Open Meetings Act.
The board drops all these different complaints related to how this meeting was set up, related to the fact that the super mayor did so without the presence of the board, without approval of the board, and this should be surprising to no one, because similar to our federal system, where the executive, which would be the mayor in this instance, the president in our federal system, can make appointments, certain positions need to be confirmed by the legislature. That is the Board of Trustees. They voted no on firing Keith Freeman, so the idea that she's going to be able to replace him, even though they said no, he's still in that position, is absurd in every possible way.
Yesterday, Cook County Judge Thaddeus Wilson agreed.
The board has been absolutely fantastic in trying to keep the government operating. The people suffer, the employees suffer, while her reign of terror continues.
I mean, again, these meetings are absolutely chaotic. You can see people about to get into fights in the crowd of these meetings. We've shown different various clips of people freaking out about the super mayor, calling her out, demanding that she resign, demanding that she step down. But the way it's described by this attorney who's working for the village of Dolton couldn't be more clear. Her reign of terror needs to come to an end. She's ruling like a dictator. She fancies herself a queen of the village of Dolton. And the fact of the matter is, we've seen the financial records. We've seen her deplete millions upon millions of dollars of funds that did not need to be depleted in ways that are super questionable. And she needs to go. And I will point out that there was an investigation launched against Eric Adams, the mayor of New York, my mayor, that resulted in indictment about 10 months after the investigation was launched. But by contrast, the super mayor has been under all these different various investigations for years, and she's managed to stay in power on her own, despite the fact that all these different various people around her are getting caught up with all these different indictments.
It's not a good feeling working in a hostile work environment. It's not a good feeling at all. And that verdict yesterday brings hope to the employees that now we can get back to doing things the correct way, decent and in order. I'm happy, and also I got calls from the residents, and they are happy as well.
Look, I gotta give a lot of credit to the Village Board of Trustees for fighting back against the super mayor for years and years, fighting back against her depleting the previous surpluses in the village of Dolton, fighting to get a recall election on the ballot, which, by the way, they won the recall election against the super mayor. The voters already voted her out, but a judge, of course, ruled that the recall was unconstitutional and then threw out the vote, and that's the only reason reason why the super mayor is currently in power at this moment in time. But these people have been fighting the good fight. They have been going up against the super mayor. They have faced unbelievable acts of retaliation, and yet they continue to show up and show out for the residents of the village of Dolton. And in that regard, they deserve a lot of credit. And for those of you who are saying you voted for this, that they voted for this and all that, yes, while they did vote for the super mayor when they didn't know all that much about her, except she was running against the previous corruption of the previous government, that is true. But shortly after, they moved to vote her out, and it's honestly one of the most active people participating in their government that I've seen in a very long time, and that's likely due in part to the national attention the chaos in Dolton has actually gotten.
Meanwhile, Mayor Henyard's personal attorney, Bo Brindley, is also responding this afternoon, saying in part, Mayor Henyard will appeal and the truth will come out. A truth that reveals a corrupt board of trustees trying to hijack the mayor's office through false statements and outright criminal conduct.
Now, the super mayor has also vowed to appeal this ruling so that she can come back with all her crazy appointments and all that and establish herself as the queen of the village of Dolton. However, she's facing a battle on multiple different various fronts because she's also apparently subject to eviction, because that's how crazy everything about this story needs to get.
Dolton Mayor Tiffany Henyard has a new crisis on her hands. She's being booted out of her home. Fox 32 has obtained copies of an eviction notice filed in Cook County Court against Henyard and her boyfriend, Kamal Woods. Henyard has been renting a home in the 14600 block of South Harvard for the past 3 years, but the owner of the home told us Henyard and Woods are behind on the rent and owe more than $3,300. The notice also says Henyard has refused to allow an inspection of that property.
Is that not one of the most amazing things that you could see? The super mayor makes almost $300,000 between her two positions at Thornton Township and the village of Dolton, and she's behind by $3,300 on her rent, effectively squatting in this place for the last 3 months, even though she lives in that home with a boyfriend who also presumably has a job. And that's just how crazy the story is. The super mayor is also squatting on a family and is facing eviction because she hasn't paid $3,300 in rent over 3 months and won't let the owner inspect the property. So yeah, the cherry on top of everything is that the super mayor might actually be out of a job and homeless by the end of this, and hopefully going to jail. And honestly, that's a deserved outcome based on what she's put the residents of the village of Dolton through. But you know what? Those are just my thoughts. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. If you like the video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social media, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about the super mayor trying to reach for dictator status and failing. Till next time.